Hello everybody, it's Tim here again to another movie review, this time for the new movie Immaculate, starring Sydney Sweeney. And yes, the title of the movie is pretty much what the movie is about, which is about Immaculate Conception, where she gets pregnant miraculously at this Catholic place where she's like studying to be a nun. And of course, they all believe, it's another Virgin Mary, so they start treating her like one. And there's this other crazy nun who gets jealous of Sydney Sweeney being the one who has become pregnant because she wanted to be the Virgin Mary in this situation, and she actually tries to drown her at one point, and then she gets killed. But pretty much that's what the fuck? I'm blanking out on the word. She gets contained, took down, whatever. But yeah, that's pretty much the story of the movie. Sydney Sweeney wants to be a nun. She had a near death experience when she was younger, and she believes God saved her for a reason. So she decides to try to figure out what that is. She goes to this Catholic place to go through the basic nun training and all that. And you got the priest there who drops the lines that he used to study, like biology and all that, and science and everything. And big spoiler twist, by the time you get to the end, you find out that they have like a nail or whatever that was or a piece of wood that was like part of the crucifixion of Jesus, and it has DNA on it. We don't know if it's like DNA of basically like, Satan, or if it's DNA of Jesus, and they're trying to like bring the Savior back into reality. And then and of course they're the ones that impregnated Sydney Sweeney, and you get to the end and Sydney Sweeney's like talking to one of the guys, and they're like, she's like, this is not God's will. And they're like, well, if it isn't God's will, why hasn't he stopped us? And it's going to be code word for Sydney Sweeney's going to fly off and start beating their asses. And Sydney Sweeney's an actress that was pretty lame, character-wise, and probably really performance-wise in Madam Web. That's pretty much the only other thing I've seen her in. And I know on Twitter she's like really famous for having big hooters and being attractive, and she is an attractive woman, and she does have big hooters. But it's pretty much what she's famous for on Twitter in terms of like the male population. But I know she was also in the show called Euphoria, and that's another thing that she was famous for, but I've never watched it, so I never really cared about this actress until now. Seeing her in this, she does a great performance. She's the best part of the movie. I will say this movie is over long, and it does drag at points, and for some of it I'm like, I've seen this before. This is just that standard, like, evil Catholic thing again. I've seen it in 1,000 other horror movies, so there's not a lot new here for most of this. But when it actually does get into the plot and you do find out what's going on, I thought it was kind of a cool idea. And when it gets to the third act, I really thought really picked the movie up and saved it for me when you got the action at the end, with her like beating a evil nun to death with a crucifix, and then like setting the evil priest on fire, and at the end like stabbing him through the throat. And I thought the ending to this was really drove home like just like the hardcore feel of this movie by the end. I will say this: I expected this movie to be like more shocking in terms of like stuff that was going on in it than what it ended up being. The ending really is the most shocking part, because of course she has the baby, and the baby turns out to be the Antichrist, which is what she talks about the baby could possibly be. And you don't see it, but you hear the baby like making inhuman noises, so it's come out like to look like something like a deformed demon or something. And she smashed it with a rock. I watched Cody Leach's review of this, and he was talking about how this like ending or whatever might be controversial. I really don't get why. Some people have talked about this being like an anti-religious statement or something. I'm like, not really. I mean, she kills the baby. It comes out obviously demonic looking. You can tell by the way the noises that it's making off camera. So she basically saves the world from the Antichrist. So I don't really get this as like an anti-religious message. Maybe if you're like extremely Catholic or hardcore Catholic, you might be upset because it paints Catholics in a bad way. But only like this specific group of Catholics are the ones who are in on this evil conspiracy that's going on in the movie. And they're obviously doing wrong. I will say this: it is another like painting Catholics in a bad way, like horror movie or whatever. But Catholics do a lot of bad shit. They have been known to. So at the same time, there is probably a lot of truth to this in terms of like the crazy Catholics out there, and even like most regular Catholics will tell you that a lot of the people in the Catholic Church, there's a lot of crazy ones in there. But of course, not all Catholics are insane or whatever, or evil. But the ones in this particular movie are, and that's fine. It's a horror movie. But once again, I will say this movie is not perfect. Overall, I'd give it a 4 out of 4 because the third act really impressed me. I like the action at the end. But overall, yeah, it's not perfect. There's like this nun or whatever who's like telling Sydney Sweeney she needs to get out of there and all that, telling her that what's going on is not good. And she basically gets took by the other evil nuns, and they like chop her tongue off. And it's obvious CGI when they cut her tongue off. Other thing is like at the end or whatever, when the evil priest is like stabbing her in the stomach, I kind of felt it like when he was stabbing her while she was pregnant, like trying to cut the baby out. But at the same time, you can tell the blood's CGI. But yeah, overall, other than that, just the film feeling like it's too long, I'd easily give this a 4 out of 4. In terms of like another religious horror flick, this is easily one of the better ones. I can see why people would get this confused with The First Omen, which is another movie that came out recently around the same time, which is almost the exact same film. But at the same time, no, this is usually a 4 out of 4 film. Sydney, this is the best performance I've seen Sydney Sweeney do. Once again, I have not seen Euphoria. I've only seen this chick in one other movie, and that's Madam Web, which she was giving nothing to do. Overall, this is a 4 out of 4 film. I thought it was great. I highly recommend it. It would be a full price film. Yeah, so there's pretty much nothing really left to say. It is another evil religious movie, but it's obviously one of the better ones. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you again.